No, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
October, which
Oh,
is our
there you are.
outrageous October. Uh, And we've got our special guest with us on today, who is Brian Byrom. He was born and raised in Southeast Texas, where he nurtured a passion for mythology, philosophy, theology, and folklore. So, along with his love of nature and reading, just led him to create his own universe filled with characters and relics and mystery and lore. So, writing has become one of the most enjoyable parts of his life. And we sincerely hope, and he hopes that you get some sense of that when you dive into the story that we are talking about today, which is Second Eight, The Three Rings. So, welcome to the fireside, Brian Byrom.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. That it's wonderful to get us being able to just dive right in to a new book from a new author. So thank you for releasing that, because it's fairly, fairly new to the shelves. So those who are watching us by way of replay or watching us live, we're again talking with Brian Byrom, the author of Second Eight, The Three Rings. Second Eight, The Three Rings. So you're going to put this on your TBR list, or you'll put this on your list to read now. Check it out at your independent booksellers. Check it out on, line. Check it out at the library, or request it at the library. If it's not on your library shelves, you can request a new book for your library that you want on your shelves. So we're so happy to have him with us this afternoon. So this particular book opens up in the prologue. It says, "What's the point? They're all dead." Now, how does that single lines kind of set up the stage for what's going to follow in the story, Brian?
That line sets up one of the main characters' motivation throughout the book and what will be the rest of the series, but it also ties together the history and the present of the characters that are all involved. He's waking up after an event that is going to dictate the entire rest of the story. Everything revolves around what has just happened to this one individual, and his reason to continue living is what this book is about.
And it sort of starts off, it seems like this kind of battle fight scene in another realm, or another platform, a spiritual plane, so to speak. So was this idea of kind of a good versus evil or spiritual conflict been a long held interest of yours?
Yeah, because I've like you said earlier, I've always loved mythology and I've loved theology, and I really, both of those have to do with good and evil and that struggle. And, I mean, when you boil it down to it, almost every story does have some version of good versus evil in it. But I've always been intrigued by, religion and mythology and philosophy as well. And I just like the idea of being able to merge all of those things into one. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of things that you draw in, and it's easy to draw in too much, I think. And so I've tried to kind of hold back and not go crazy with what I bring in there. But it's definitely been something that's been in my mind since I was very young and started reading, because that's what I love to read.
And so given kind of that merger of interest with the mythology and the theology and interest in folklore and all of those kinds of all those areas of genre and thinking and thought, is that what brought you into saying, okay, I can do a series and this is going to be a series?
It kind of just became a series. I started writing, and as the story developed, it just exploded in my head. It was just bigger and bigger and bigger. And I very quickly realized that it wasn't going to be one book. So then I started making really detailed notes and writing down all kinds of stuff, just trying to develop the universe and develop the lore, because I really like when a book seems like it's been thought out from the very beginning. When a series has been thought out from the very beginning, instead of getting halfway through it and go, oh, I need to add a bunch of stuff in here to make the ending work or something, So I tried to flesh it all out right out of the gate. But yeah, it became clear very quickly that it was going to be multiple books.
So what is it you hope to explore in this particular story? You've got kind of angels, demons, and all those kinds of pieces that differs from other stories that include kind of those same type, of characters or have similar characters. What is a key theme that you wanted to explore differently from what may be presently out there with some of the same characters?
Yeah, one of my big in reading a lot of the philosophy that I read, there's common, and in theology as well, there's common themes of personal responsibility, of self-reliance, of the value of hard work, and train harder, get better, right? Instead of just magically becoming the chosen one, you have to work for it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just walk into this. So that's a lot of what the characters are going to run into. They're not just going to wake up and be ready to fight demons, right? They have to fight, they have to work, they have to train. But there's also, I really wanted to bring in a spiritual aspect and a mental aspect, right? You have to train your mind as well as your body. So they have a guru that's he is a version of one of the Buddhist gods, that he comes to help them and trains their minds and trains their thoughts and teaches them to keep calm in battle instead of just freak out. So I really like that piece of it, and I feel like that's something different, right? It's not just go in there swinging, right? You got to think about things and be calm.
So you give your characters, the story has some center, a place for the characters to center themselves, mentally and spiritually before they dive into this, engagement with forces beyond natural encounter, so to speak.
Yeah.
So your main characters, they're young people, all right? So these are, youth who, they've encountered some significant loss in their lives, the loss of persons they love, like from the beginning. You're like, okay, how did these kids, why are they in an orphanage? And how did they, you've got a boys' home. How does this kind of loss, this grieving, of close relationships, loss of, parents and other, loved ones, impact, these kids' ability, to make decisions and move forward or even trust others?
So when the kids lost their parents, they were very young. I think only two of them were really old enough to have much memory of it, right? So they've grown up without them. They still feel the loss, but it's not necessarily defining in their lives, right? They know it happened. They know that they're not like other kids. They know they don't have the family life and the parents that other kids have, but they have really good substitutes for that in St. Alexis, where they live. they've got people that are dedicated to making them as strong and healthy as they can. So they've got great surrogates around them, but there is always that kind of, as they get older and as they start to understand what's happening around them, those questions start to pop up. You know, what really happened? What happened to our parents? How? Why? You know, and those questions start to come out in the book, and it's definitely a central theme in the series, is finding out what happened to them.
And so we do get a kind of a backstory on like Bren. I'm gonna put Bren or Brian. I want to make
It's
sure
actually
I pronounce
Burn. Yeah, I
Burn.
should have
Okay,
spelled it a way
Burn. I'm
that was
like,
easier to pronounce.
okay, so Burn. So, how does, even that setting of this boys' home, play into, his relationships and how he kind of finds his own way?
You know, one of the things I really like about the setting and being at the orphanage at St. Alexis is that all of them are being raised the same way, in the same, they're different people, but they're being raised similarly. They're being taught the same lessons. So it really is nice in the story because they all understand each other, right?
Mm,
They all were in the same classes with their gurus. They were all in the same training sessions, right? So they can reference those things to each other. Hey, remember what Master Fudo told you to do,
mhm.
right? And they can center each other, right? So it helps them being around each other as much as they are. But they're also getting older. A couple of them are teenagers and a couple are older teenagers. So they're going to start expanding their world a little bit outside of their home, just like normal teenagers do, right? They start driving and they can go places now. You know, it's not just
Mhm.
we're at home with the parents all the time. So it's going to expand as their personalities grow. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. So without giving the whole story away, can you provide our live and replay audience what the premise is behind Second Eight, the Three Rings?
So the premise, and I lay it out in chapter 5 or chapter 6. It goes way back to the building of the temple in Jerusalem, and there are some real world legends about Solomon actually controlling demons to help him build the temple, right? Um, so I took that story and I expanded on that, right? So basically what happened is, God gives Solomon the ability to control demons, including the devil. Um, and ever since then, the demons have been somewhat trapped in hell, but now they're kind of getting out and they're starting to test the waters and see what they can get away with. And it's they're trying to get back to heaven, right? That's what they've wanted ever since they got kicked out. So they are going to run up against these kids, um, and their allies, and they're going to be the defense. You know, they're the line between us and the entire world being taken over by hell. So that's the premise. And it's probably going to take 5 or 6 books to finish it up, but I'm down for it.
Okay. And so making that connection between and that's something new for me, as far as thinking of the mythology or the connection cross section between Solomon's temple and, biblically, you read the story biblically about Solomon's temple and all the process and procedures and what the people brought and gave, but
Right.
there are legends and folklore, that has kind of come across ages and times from different peoples and different traditions and people groups that talk about how it came to be. So
Right.
kind of bring how you bridge that together was, bring that together was interesting to me because it's something I had never, thought of or heard, remember from, some of the mythology that I've read before, and how, with that kind of biblical mythology intersection. So how important was kind of having that, intersection play out, in this particular story?
Well, that's really what allowed me to bridge the two, right? That event allowed me to bring the mythology into the religious stories as well. Um, but a part of this universe too is, I guess, one of the underlying themes here is that all of the monsters and the mythology and things that we know about, I just have
Hmm.
them kind of classified as all celestial beings, right? They've
Okay.
always been here. They've been part of it the whole time. So humans' interpretation of encounters with these people turned into mythology. Sometimes it turned into religion. Sometimes it turned into other things, right? But
Hmm.
they all know each other. All the monsters and the demons and the angels, they all know each other because they've all been here the whole time. The vampires, the ogres, they've all known each other, right? And some of them are demons. They just look like ogres, so they call them ogres, but they're actually demons, right? So it's an interesting mix up, but in my head it works. I don't know if it works in anybody else's head, but it makes sense to me.
And something else that I also noted just in looking at the format of the book, at the beginning of the chapters, you've got a highlighted quote. Um, so what is the importance of kind of leading in to the chapters with, a quote at the beginning for the reader?
So it's kind of a tie-in into the philosophy that they're going to be taught by their guru. A lot of those things. Marcus, so Burns' first name is Marcus. His middle name is Aurelius because his father
Hmm.
loved Marcus Aurelius, and he's really big into that philosophy, right? So there's a lot of Marcus Aurelius stuff all through the book. There's a lot of quotes at the beginning of the chapters, but they're all Stoic quotes. Um, some of them tie into the chapter, some of them don't. They just are quotes I thought needed to be in the book, right? Um, and I really like the idea of. I mean, I've read Marcus Aurelius Meditations a dozen times probably, and every time I read it, I get something great out of it. And I just like the idea of, if somebody's reading my book, one of those quotes might hit home for them, and they're not expecting it because they're reading a fantasy novel, but they might just get something of value outside of just the entertainment value of the book. So I thought that was important because it's been important in my life. And sometimes you just have a quote that hits you in the face right when you need it. So maybe that'll happen for somebody, and that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think I think if readers make connections to the story by thinking about kind of outside the box and in the box as well, you know, where did I've seen this before, I've heard this before, maybe in another format. Maybe it was that intro to philosophy class from college that I remember it from, or maybe it's from, church history, from a church history class, or
Sure.
something. But I've run across this, and there's some meaning that I get from seeing it in print and then being able to connect it to, what I'm currently reading, and see how it can apply there, or maybe it'll apply to something that I'm, working through or thinking about, that has absolutely nothing to do with the book, but it has
Sure.
some meaning,
Exactly. Exactly. You
So,
just never know.
because you never, yes, that part, you never know. So, with, even with the title, second eight, um, second eight, the three rings, um, what is, the significance of the second eight? Is that more of kind of a time concept, time
Mhm.
continuum type thing, or is it kind of kind of like kind of like a calendar looking, time
Yeah, you
wise,
had it.
or does it,
Yeah.
how
No,
does that,
you
what's
had it
that
right first.
connection?
Yeah, you had it right first. The second eight. So the first eight was it turns out that the first eight was these kids' parents, and they are the
Okay.
second eight, right? So, and that's all early in the book. That's not any kind of crazy spoiler or anything, but their parents fought the demons first, and then the kids are going to take up the mantle. So they're the second eight. So that's where that comes from.
Okay. And so further on, readers can expect to, I guess, uncover the significance of the three rings.
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
All right.
you'll run into that, and it is a classroom setting um, throughout the book. They're taking a lot of classes now. At the beginning, they're just reading, writing, arithmetic, right? But as
Mhm.
soon as everything becomes clear, their curriculum switches dramatically because none of that stuff really matters anymore. And they start getting taught about the three rings and the things that are going on around them that they need to be made aware of.
So would you say that this first book is kind of um, the foundation, or kind of the 101 class
Yes.
before, before the deep dive
Yep.
into really the the crux of the curriculum and story?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is. It's setting all the groundwork. Um, not all of it, I guess, but enough of it for you to understand. And I'm about halfway through the second book, and it's been very different because I don't have to lay the groundwork anymore, right? It's already there, so I can just go right into what's going on and tell the story. But yeah, this one is definitely going to give you all the data you need to understand the rest of them.
Okay. So again, for those who are watching us live and those who are catching us by replay, we're here with Brian Byrom, the author of Second Eight, The Three Rings. The book is a fairly new release. It came out in May of this year. What is something that you've learned about yourself as a writer, having, with the journey of promoting and book signings and all that comes with now being a published author?
I learned that I have to be social. I'm not normally very social. So no, I've done a couple of book signings, and they're a lot of fun. I was definitely a little anxious about the first one, but when people want to talk about your book or anything that you're passionate about, that anxiety goes away,
Mhm.
because you're talking about a comfortable topic for yourself, no matter where you're sitting. Um, so that's been really cool because as I started finishing the book, I was thinking about those kind of things. I'm like, how do I market this? How do I, do I have to go sit at Barnes and Noble for 4 hours? And, I was like, I guess I do. I mean, I guess you don't, but you might as well, right?
Right.
And I've kind of bit the bullet, and I've signed up for a couple of signings, and it's been fun. I mean, because by and large, the people that are going to approach you to talk about the book are genuinely interested in it, and they probably like fantasy books anyway. So you can almost immediately relate with those readers, and they like learning about what you have in your head and what you put on the pages.
And I think as a reader, that there's something about connecting to the person that you read, and you have that fan moment. Well, I just read the book, or I just
Sure.
finished, or I just started, and now you're here, and then you can actually engage and ask questions, as maybe something about the character, or something that the character said or did, or okay, or why did you end this chapter like this, or uh, is there a next book,
Right.
or is there something that you left unfinished? Why did this character get killed off. So we get, as a reader, we get to ask those questions and get answers to them where we wouldn't necessarily, get that kind of response without, being able to see the author live and in person, like at a signing. So that's awesome that you've been able to do that for your
Yeah.
readers.
Well, and that's great for authors too, I would think. I mean, just from the small amount of experience I have doing that, I love talking to people about the book, and when they've read it and they'll tell me about the characters or ask me questions. That can create completely other ideas for the next books. You might ask me a question. I'm like, oh my God, that's great. And it just develops into something. It's like a brainstorming session, but it's also just makes the author feel good when a reader comes up and wants to talk to them. Because I've seen plenty of authors at book signings and nobody's talking to them, and you're like, man, that sucks. So if you see authors at book signings, talk to them.
All right. Shameless plug that we are here talking with Brian Byrom, and we're going to deep dive, guys. Put this on your reading list for all of our book club partners, those who are PharSide Book Club members, as well as those all across that are connected to the PharSide, other book clubs around the region, around the DMV and up and down the East Coast and on the West Coast that are connected and watching. Make sure you add this book into your cart, on your Amazon cart, or on any of your other your marketing websites or book websites that you like to go to, or going into your independent bookstores and asking for Second Eight, the Three Rings. So Brian, do you feel that you found your niche in this kind of genre of fantasy, or are there other genres that you'd like to explore in the future?
I really, I really enjoy this, and I really feel like I'm going to expand this universe quite a bit. Um, I think the only thing that I've really been thinking about is this book and this series is intended to be accessible for younger kids, 12 years old, 3 years old. It's not bloody and gory or vulgar or anything like that, but I want it to be enjoyable to adults as well. But there was definitely, I like to read a lot of horror, and there was definitely some times when I was writing that I found myself getting a little too dark to be in that age range. Like
Okay.
I was like, oh, I need to dial that back a little bit. But I like writing like that, so I'm kind of developing a basic outline of another series that's in the same universe, but it's more of an adult, not just in the horror aspect of it, right?
Okay.
It's gonna be a little gorier, a little dirtier, a little grittier, I guess. But I'm trying not to get distracted with another project. I want to develop it as I go, because I do want to kind of weave it into this Second Date series to a certain degree, and maybe utilize some characters that they come across along the way in this side story. But overall, it'll still be fantasy. It'll still be angels and demons and monsters, things like that.
All right. So, prior to writing this particular, project, this book, were there any particular authors? And you mentioned, you know, being younger and being into, the horror genre. Were there any particular authors that you read that kind of inspired your kind of model or structure, your language and setting? For what you were writing that you look to for inspiration?
I don't know that I could pinpoint
Mhm.
specifically the setting and writing style and stuff, but there's definitely authors that were very influential. I mean, I love H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, um, Stephen King. The Stand is my favorite, well, my
Mhm.
favorite horror book. But I love sci-fi and fantasy as well. I mean, Dune is my favorite book of all time. I absolutely love it. Um, I love the world building. I love the the lore. I love just everything about it. So that one's definitely been influential. Um, those are the big ones. But I read. I mean, when I was young, I grew up on a farm, right? So I mean, there wasn't a lot to do. So we read and read and read and read and read. I read everything I could get my hands on. And my grandma was a librarian, so she was always getting me books. So it's hard to even remember what influences you when you have read for so long and you've read so much. You don't know where stuff comes from sometimes, but every now and then you pick up one of those books and you remember. You read it and you're like, oh, I remember this, and that's enjoyable.
Now, how can our viewers connect with you and purchase your book and all of that great and wonderful stuff?
So the website is thesecond8.com. You can also go to Facebook. I have a Facebook group that you should be able to find really easy. It's also called The Second Eight. You can buy the book on Barnes & Noble or on Amazon. But you can message me directly through Facebook. All that stuff comes straight to me. I've got Instagram, but I'm old and I don't even know how it works. So if you message me on Instagram, good luck. I'll do my best. But Facebook is definitely the best way to do it.
All right, so you've heard it here on the PharSide. We want to thank you, Brian Byrom, for spending time with us this afternoon, and we wish you continued success with the Second Eight, the Three Rings, and all of the wonderful projects to come. We're going to look forward to finishing out the series. I myself are in the middle of this first book, so I'll have it done by the time the second book in the series is released. I promise. So we'd like to thank you for coming, and again wish you all the best for projects to come. So to our live audience and those who will be watching by replay, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club, the Facebook page, for more amazing author interviews and posts. As this month, in the month of October, we're celebrating National Reading Group Month as well as National Book Month, and all things reading and authors in the month of October. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a great and wonderful afternoon.